What's up, y'all? We're back here at the 2026 NFL Scouting Combine. You're finding us on the Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network. I'm Will McFadden. Tori, McElhaney, and I sat down with a great crop of national media guests. We got some heavy hitters, including Judy Battista, Ben Solak, Bryant McFadden, maybe a cousin of mine, I'm not so sure, but we chatted nonetheless. Dan Graziano and Danny Kelly. It's a lot of fun, a lot of insight into where the Falcons stand, where they could go next. And it's great. So I hope you guys enjoy what we've got coming up for you. We are so fortunate to be joined now by Judy Battista, the co-host of The Insiders on NFL Network.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So things have been busy here in Atlanta.
Yes.
We've got a new head coach, got a new GM, got a new president of football, new position for us. Let's actually start with Matt Ryan in that president of football role. What do you think of kind of this new movement, be it Andrew Luck, Stanford, Dan Morgan with the Panther, like former players getting into these leadership positions? What do you make of that, and how do you expect Matt to kind of do?
Tony Baselli, who's done the job in the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's really interesting because I always had the feeling that this generation of players who have made a lot of money in their playing careers, I'm like, are they really going to go the coaching route to stay in football? Like, coaching is a grind, obviously. And I'm like, are those guys going to do that when you have had a level of stardom and obviously an income level that, like, you don't have to do this? But this role for former players, for, top level former players, like, is the perfect fit because I think they get the bigger picture of the organization. Obviously, they have deep ties to the organization, to ownership, and they sort of get the bigger picture, business side and football side. So I think that's a great role. And I mean, look, Matt Ryan is a smart guy, so he will be fine in any role, but I think it's a great fit for him.
Talking about fits as well, Kevin Stefanski coming in as the 20th head coach in the franchise history. What did you kind of make of this chance that he gets to now go from Cleveland to the Falcons and being able to coach this particular roster where it is right now?
Well, first of all, he's a really good offensive coach, and he's had, let's be honest, at Cleveland, he has had to navigate some tough waters. That year that he won Coach of the Year was the most ridiculous year, right? They played 25 quarterbacks. It was ridiculous. And they were winning with literally quarterbacks that he'd be like, all right, next up, let's go.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of confidence that that part of the game is going to be fine. Let's face it, this team is not that far off. It's as close as you can be without being the division champion. So I don't think you have to. I know they always say you start from the bottom every year, but this is not a team that some of the turnarounds we saw this year in the NFL. This is not that situation. The floor is pretty high. So much is going to depend on Penix's health. If he can come back. How will he come back? What's the timeline there? And I don't think we have a really good read on that yet. So that's a big question. But I thought franchise tagging Kyle Pitts is the obvious thing to do. Stefanski's had a lot of success using a tight end in his offense. So I thought it was a really good fit for Kevin Stefanski. Quite frankly, Kevin Stefanski was the top head coach available probably until John Harbaugh surprisingly got fired. And so, you landed one of the best guys available. So I think it's a really good fit for the pieces that you have, because this is a team ready to win right now. You just don't have to do that much more.
Yeah, and I really like, for that reason, kind of keeping some stability on the defense side of the ball.
Yeah.
Right? And that allows them to focus on the offense. And particularly, I think you hit the nail on the head, is the work that he did navigating tricky quarterback situations, which is something Atlanta has been trying to get out of pretty much since Matt Ryan's tenure ended here.
Right.
When you look at, though, the situation around the quarterback, though, whoever that may be, how much more can we get from Bijan Robinson than last year? The offensive line,
so awesome.
Everybody, it seems like a perfect situation in a lot of ways.
So awesome, yeah. Listen, you always want to have as many weapons around your quarterback as you can have, but you've got two really good, like I just said, and Kyle Pitts, and Bijan was just, I don't know if he was underappreciated or just not as high on the radar for most people, but I feel like last season everybody was like, oh, wow, he's good. And so now the rest of the league is like, wow, this guy. Those are two really great weapons to have. And again, I think Stefanski knows how to use weapons like that. I mean, we've seen that from his experience in Cleveland, again, having a really good running back and, again, having a quality tight end. So I think that this is again, they've got good personnel. You've always got to get more. And again, you have to see what Penix comes back like and if he's, what his situation's going to be.
Well, I think that was going to be my next question is like really honing in on the quarterback situation in Atlanta. You do have this question mark with Michael Penix. And you kind of have to like, what's the saying? You got to prepare for the worst, but expect the best. So now the Falcons move forward with Michael Penix Jr. You no longer have Kirk Cousins in that room any longer as of March 11th with the post-June 1 designation. For you, what would you like to see the Falcons do in that quarterback room for 2026?
Well, I mean, you obviously have to get a backup that you feel comfortable can play some games, right? Because you don't know what the timeline is, and Penix has been up and down. I mean, you have seen flashes of, wow, okay, is this what it's going to be? But it's been uneven, and so you have to insulate yourself. You have to have, and even if he comes back, you have to be prepared. We saw it so much in the NFL this year. Quarterbacks rarely play all 17 games, unfortunately, in the NFL, and so you've got to be ready with a backup who can go in and win games and win a few games. So they got to get that in the building. And I think it would also be better if they have a quarterback who's had some experience who can help him develop, right? I mean, I think those are the most successful quarterback rooms in the NFL, is one where if you have a young quarterback, you have a veteran who's sort of been through it all, who can mentor him and be a sounding board, and Kevin Stefanski will obviously be the sounding board too, but like a peer to be that helps young quarterback development too.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting yesterday. Kevin Stefanski was saying, we want whoever is talking to the quarterbacks to speak with one voice.
Yes.
It doesn't mean there's not going to be multiple people kind of in that player's ear, but they all have to have the same message. So he clearly understands quarterback development, especially with a young quarterback.
No question.
But when you hire a two-time coach of the year, a lot of people are going to know about that individual. The GMs are usually less known, and when you hire somebody into that role, you kind of start then digging and learning a little bit about him for the first time. What do you know about Ian Cunningham after talking to him? He seems like a great dude. I'm excited to get to know him, but what do you know about what he's bringing to the table?
So I've interviewed Ian a few times as part of like the leagues when he was part of the Accelerator program. They would have it at league meetings. So he's been on the GM radar screen for a few cycles now, and obviously the work in Chicago really elevated him. Like, really good roster developer. I think known for collaborative, which is so important that you have that sort of synergy in a building, because we've seen when you don't have it, that things go off the rails pretty quickly. I am really excited to see what he does now that he has finally gotten his opportunity, because he has waited for his opportunity, and the league certainly, I think there were people in the league who thought this guy is ready for the next step, and so now that he's got it, I'm super excited for him. I was really happy to see that he landed a job, and again, I think this is a really good situation, because this is, again, not a roster that you have to blow up and make over. So like this is the kind of thing where you like a few pieces here and there, and you can really have something.
When you were interviewing him, and before he ever got this opportunity, and you kind of what about him made you feel like this is a guy who he's going to be a GM one day?
Well, he's just really serious and smart and like analytic. All the things you would think about a GM. Yeah. Like he's just really, he's really thoughtful and like thinks about roster construction and just thinks about, again, the big picture about how you put a roster together, and thinks about synergy with the coach. That like you need to, right? The GM can't just be getting guys that he likes. It's got to be guys that fit into what the head coach wants. So. I just think like it was clear that he had the makeup and also just the bearing of a general manager. He could do that job. General managers more and more are out there, just like coaches are, and so I think the ability to handle those questions is important. And so I think he's going to be fine. I'm excited for him.
One of the key insights, though, I think that he has shared is how much he loves draft picks, building through the draft. It seems like Kevin Stefanski shares a similar kind of development attitude and mindset. And I've just been trying to kind of square these two things. Atlanta, on the one hand, we're talking about them as a roster that is kind of right there on the cusp, and maybe can they get over the hump. Normally, I think that would lend to, let's attack free agency, let's go get a couple of proven commodities at key spots to really push us over the hump. With the draft approach, especially only 5 picks, what can Atlanta do this offseason in your mind to get them into that top spot in the NFC South?
Well, first of all, again, they don't have to do that much to get to the top spot in the NFC South, right? I mean, traditionally, the last few years, right, the NFC South has been like right here.
Yeah.
So,
all the way to week 17.
Right? I mean, it's really tightly bunched. So, they don't have to. They don't have to be the New England Patriots where they have to go crazy and remake the roster and do something dramatic. Look, I think they have to get, again, they need to put as much as they possibly can around Penix. They need to have a quality backup quarterback so that if he can't go or you need to make a quarterback change, you have somebody who can go in there and win. But you don't need that much. You've got players on defense, you don't really need that much. With the few draft picks, I mean, I think you can do some work in free agency. You don't have to do blockbuster free agency, but smart signings in free agency, put some pieces in place. Again, I think the Falcons are in a really good spot. I just don't think they have to have some sort of crazy roster makeover to be successful.
Judy, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
My pleasure.
This was
Great
incredible insight, and we hope to have you on again.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
We got Ben Solak of ESPN joining us now. Ben, thank you for taking the time. It's always a busy time of the year. What do you think the impact of this offseason for Atlanta is going to mean kind of for Atlanta's offense with Kevin Stefanski coming in here and Tommy Rees, if you have any insight on him as offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I actually really like what Stefanski and Rees did in Cleveland. I was one of the very few people who was watching the Cleveland offense, not for any quarterback-specific takes, or being like, man, the way they're using tight ends is pretty cool, right? When they re-signed Pitts, or I should say franchise-tag Pitts, I was really excited because this is a staff that uses tight ends in a really unique way. They get them the ball behind the line of scrimmage, yards after the catch opportunities. So I really like it for Pitts. I think running game-wise, a lot of what Kevin did when his Browns line was at its best fits a lot of what Atlanta's done previously with this group. Kevin had to change some of that rushing attack over time as Cleveland's offense changed. They tried to go more gun for Deshaun Watson. You're going to see him get back to 2020, 2021 basics. And that, I think, fits really, really nicely with Bijan, with Algier if he returns, and then this offensive line. So overall, I really, really like the general fit. There's obviously one kind of big question mark in the middle, which is, are we going to walk into this season with Michael Penix for sure as our entrenched starter? Or are we going to bring in a potential quarterback too, and we're going to have the potential offense change around them? And so a lot of the ancillary pieces, and Falcons fans have heard this before, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, a lot of the ancillary pieces are great. Offensive line, there's a lot of reason to excitement. They know that I like the staff a lot. We got to solve the quarterback position. Hopefully that's the first domino, and then things go from there.
I want to touch on the run game a little bit more because it's something that I've been looking into recently is, marrying kind of what Kevin Stefanski and the Falcons have done with wide zone stuff, but also the fact that Kevin Stefanski wants to add a little bit more gap stuff. John Robinson comes from gap style in Texas. When you look at kind of the evolution of what this run game can be, I know Tommy Rees and Kevin Stefanski said, we're not reinventing their run game wheel, but we are hoping to maximize it. What still left is there for someone like a Bijan Robinson?
Right. So one of the things about Bijan coming into the season was the lack of the explosive plays, right? It was where are the 40-yard runs and the 60-yard runs? And when you're a super heavy zone team, you're just not going to get a lot of those because you're going to get a ton of horizontal flow. The run is going into one side of the field. You're going to get funneled into the sideline, right? If you can run a little bit more gap power hits on a lane, hits on a line, right? We are running to the B gap. And if we can hit it, we're hitting it vertical, right? Downhill, fast. We can kind of get some build-up speed here. And that, I think, is going to be able to create more of those explosives. Now, Bijan also did his job handling the explosives this year, right? These are really, really good backs. You don't need to help him out too much. But in general, when we look at really good modern running games, we look at running games that can be identityless, that can be formless, that aren't just running one thing, right? Atlanta was an extremely heavy zone team, most zone-heavy team in football, and there were times in which that allowed them to just dominate, right? That Bills game, they just leaned on them, right? I mean, there's times where that lets them go, and then there's times where they run into clever defenses that feel like they know what's coming down the pipe. So typically you've seen, Sean McVay was a very heavy zone guy, and then he changed identity over his years. Kyle Shanahan was a very heavy zone guy. He changed identity over years, and then Stefanski did the same. And so typically we want to be a running game that's got multiple pitches in our bag, multiple arrows in our quiver, such that we can change our approach relative to the defense that we're facing, and Kevin's going to do that.
And then when you kind of look adding on to that, the passing element. I do think that the Falcons fans, at least, would like to see more of a play-action element added to this offense. Last year we saw a ton of pistol, which I think gives you still some of those downhill looks for the running game and keeping things balanced. But knowing Kevin Stefanski's kind of history, and he's adapted what the quarterback wants to do, but play action is a big part of it. How much do you think they're going to still want to implement that in the offense here in Atlanta? Or, do you get the sense that he'll try to work with what his quarterback is most comfortable with?
It depends on the quarterback, right? Yeah. A lot of Stefanski's best play action stuff is what we would call movement series, which is where the quarterback's being booted out, right? It's not play action from the pocket, think Jared Goff, but it's more play action on the run, think like Sam Darnold, what he did with the Seahawks. And so that's what Stefanski did with Baker. I think that fit Baker well. Kind of depends, who's going to be throwing the football for us. If it's Penix really is a pocket guy, right? He's best on the three-step and go. And so you'll see a lot more from the pocket, and that's going to be stuff that crosses over the intermediate part of the field, right, in the middle between the numbers. Something that Drake's really good at, but I would not say the cardinal strength for Drake is the outside the numbers stuff, right? And so as we see them address wide receiver 2 here, that's going to give us a clue as to where they'd like to throw the football, right? Because if you go and you get yourself an Alex Pierce is a shot player, is a deep play guy, right? If you get yourself a Jawan Jennings, that's more of your intermediate in-breaking physical guy. If you get yourself a Wan'Dale Robinson, that's more of your screens guy. Romeo Dobbs is an out-breaking guy. So they've got a wide receiver 2 question, and how they address it is going to tell us more about how they intend to distribute the targets.
What would you like to see the Falcons do at the quarterback position? Knowing what you know about, maybe what you don't know about what Michael Penix is what his timeline is going to be. Kirk Cousins will no longer be here at the start of the new league year. What's kind of the evolution for you? What moves would you like to see them make? So
my guess is going to be that they kick the tires on Malik Willis. They figure out what the price tag is. They find out the price tag is going to be astronomically high for a player with 6 starts, and then they get off that train. And once you get off that train, I think you start looking at, so you have your veteran market, which is your Jacoby Brissett's and your Marcus Mariotas and kind of that caliber, Russell Wilson's, Jameis Winston's of the world. And then you have a lot of these quarterback 2s who are still young players who are interesting, are exciting, but they've lost their job for whatever reason. Anthony Richardson, Spencer Rattler with the Saints is one such guy. Tanner McKee in Philadelphia. You've heard Tyson Bagent rumors in this combine from the Bears. And I think you're going to see them investigate some of those options. I would guess that both Tua and Kyler end up getting cut, and you're going to look at those options. Who should they take? Man, I don't know. It's right. It is a really, really tough year for the quarterback market, where it's just like there's kind of one really strong guy in free agency in Willis, there's one really strong guy in Fernando Mendoza in the draft, and after that it's a lot of pick your flavors, imperfect options. And so I'm confident they will do something. I think that the way that they're talking about it, and with the way you've seen Penix play and also his health, they have to come in with a viable quarterback 2 option. Who it could be, man, I'll let you know in March. After they figure it out, they'll be the first to know.
All right, well, that's a deal. We'll have you back on in March. You can let us know. But, Ben, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to sit down with us.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate it.
This is a treat. We have another McFadden joining the podcast. We got Bryant McFadden of CBS Sports sitting down with us to talk a little Falcons football. Brian, thank you so much
What's
for taking
happening,
the time.
cousin? You good?
I'm doing well, man.
That's what's up. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We'll, I guess, start with the biggest news, maybe the offseason. Kevin Stefanski, Ian Cunningham now in as leadership. What was kind of your first reaction to, we'll start with Kevin Stefanski being named the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons?
Well, you know what? Me personally, when you look at Kevin Stefanski, his tenure in Cleveland, the way it ended did not paint the entire picture of what he did while he was there. 2-time NFL Coach of the Year. You don't just mistakenly get that award. He did a really good job in creating a foundation there, being able to win and, get into the postseason. Now, in terms of how it ended, a lot went wrong. But I believe he's still a more than capable head coach in terms of being consistent, being competitive, and putting forth a product that the fans could appreciate. And secondly, can he lead a locker room of men? He's shown the ability to do so it made sense for me. And then with Ian coming on as well, you look at where he's coming from, being a part of something unique and special. I think you want to, if you're trying to create something new, you want to bring in individuals that understand and they know what it takes and they know what it looks like. And hopefully, that's the mindset for Atlanta as they get ready for 2026.
Another big acquisition is, well, maybe not acquisition, just kind of a return of a great Matt Ryan returning as the president of football. And we were actually talking to Kevin Stefanski earlier today, and he was like, I remember being in Matt Ryan's combine interview over in Indy, and now he's in these interviews with prospects now. What do you see kind of from Matt Ryan in that position? Something new, he's not a franchise quarterback anymore. He's not an analyst anymore.
Yeah.
Now he is the president of football.
Yeah, my former colleague with CBS. And when I heard about the potential opportunity, I was all for it because I love seeing former players get an opportunity to get in those type of roles. Because 9 times out of 10, they have an eye for talent and they understand, they know what it looks like or what it needs to look like. And Matt Ryan is a guy who loves ball. You know, he can't play it anymore, but he still has that same love and that passion for the game and for the Atlanta Falcons. You know, regardless of how his career ended and where it ended, he will forever be known as an Atlanta Falcons, right? And he's wanted to come back to get the organization back in a better place, and being able to be in this role and help identify not just players and prospects, but potential front office officials, head coaches, and things like that. It means a lot, and that's a stepping stone that a lot of former players would love to embark in on. They just don't get the opportunity. So I'm all in rooting for him. I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. The best is yet to come. And like I said, when you have an individuals that know what good football looks like, a good brand, what it looks like, usually it works out.
That was, one of the things that was so apparent to me early on when Matt took this job was, he is one of the most competitive people I have ever been around. Like, he's got a professional demeanor, but he is as competitive as they come. And also, it was a kind of a sense of unfinished business a little bit, I think. And him coming specifically back to this organization, you really feel that his heart is in it. But I'm curious, like, what specifically can a former player bring to a role like this, and what vantage points have they had throughout their career that allows them to maybe see something from a different perspective and add that perspective to the leadership brain trust?
Culture, bringing in a positive culture. I'll say this, every opportunity I get in terms of being a part of something successful, you have to have good energy. Not just in a football locker room, in a corporate building, corporate office. If you want to have good results, you got to have good energy. Secondly, understanding and knowing who to identify for certain roles. Everyone does not deserve to be a leader. They shouldn't be leaders, right? And sometimes your leader might not be your best player, but in terms of what they bring in the above the shoulder game, they have the best skill set. So great teams have great leaders in great positions, because when it's tight in the fourth quarter, you got to have someone that can bring the troops together on the sideline, who everyone respects, and they instantly going to listen to whatever that player is saying and follow suit. And a guy like Matt Ryan, he knows exactly what that looks like, because he's been a part of those said conditions throughout his professional career. And oftentimes he's been in those leadership roles. And also, too, being able to help the maturation process in Michael Penix, right? I mean, if you talk about having an extra voice for Michael to listen to, who other than a guy like Matt Ryan? Because coaches can only do so much. Right. And most times the coaches that are coaching these players, they never really been in that fire. When it's a 2-minute situation in the fourth quarter and we got to score, they don't know how it feels. But guess who know how it feels to be in those moments? Matt Ryan. So that can be an extra voice for Michael Penix. You know, when he's outside the building, when he's at home, might have a question about certain coverages and how to attack certain things. I understand Matt Ryan might not have been involved in the game planning part, but he understands ball. You know what I mean? So I think that those are major factors as well.
I'm glad you brought up Michael Penix, because let's talk about the quarterback situation in Atlanta. Falcons, Ian Cunningham, new general manager, said this morning at the Combine that, once March 11th gets here, releasing Kirk Cousins. We know Michael Penix coming back from torn ACL this past year. You're looking at a recovery timeline that kind of makes week 1 a bit of a question mark. So as you're looking and evaluating kind of what that room looks like in Atlanta right now, kind of what are you hoping the next steps are for building that room?
Well, you hope for a speedy recovery for Penix to be able to be ready as soon as possible. But you also have to prepare if that's not the case. I think understanding and seeing what Kevin Stefanski has done in years past, I believe he potentially could look for a veteran presence to be in the building just in case Penix isn't ready for week 1. Because you want a capable quarterback that can keep things afloat until your young quarterback is ready to go. I think it should be Michael Penix's job, as long as he's healthy, because you still haven't really seen what he could do. And you don't want to take the keys away from him too soon without really seeing, because year 1, he didn't really play a lot, played the final 4 games. Year 2, it was a lot of things going wrong around him, and then he gets hurt. And now this is year 3 for him, right? So until he's healthy, you have to bring in someone who understands the offense, understands what it means to be a QB1 in this league, and understands the sense of consistency. And that could be a veteran guy who could be available, who's not a threat in terms of a quarterback competition, because it's still Penix's job. But this is a guy who says, you know what, give me the keys until he's ready to go. I can do my best job to make sure we winning games to be competitive, to ultimately get into late January football.
Yeah, it's interesting because that is an experience that Matt Ryan can also directly speak to, is being a young quarterback and growing in this league. And at every opportunity, he has said that kind of the best friend of a young quarterback is a great running game and a good offensive line.
Yes.
And Falcons have both.
Yeah.
So, where do you kind of put Bijan Robinson amongst playmakers in this league? Just putting you on the spot. Give me your Mount Rushmore, and is a Bijan for all 4 heads. And what do you think Bill Callahan is going to bring to this offensive line to help make them, a step up?
Bijan is one of the more talented running backs in the National Football League. He is overly gifted, speedy, explosive, instinctive. Contact balance is high level. He's one of the best running backs in the National Football League. So if you want to have a top 3 conversation without Bijan Robinson, stop drinking, in my opinion, at that position. I think with Callahan, unleash him. Do what San Francisco does with CMC. Do what Detroit does with Jahmyr Gibbs. He's that type of back in terms of a route runner of the football, an explosive playmaker. It makes all the sense in the world to get him involved. So, and at some point in time, you got to address the contract situation as well too, because he's one of them.
Yeah.
Like, he's very, very special. He's the best offensive weapon the Falcons have, and that's saying a lot when you have a Drake London and a Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean? But that's how special he is. So, and if the offensive line stays healthy, remember they're missing their right tackle the entire season, and Caleb.
Yeah, top 2.
So, and then you got Lindstrom, and you got Mathis. You got dogs. You know what I mean? And you lost Drew Dahlman, and you really didn't miss him that much. You know what I mean? So, collectively speaking, if the offensive line unit stays together, man, I think Bijan is going to do some numbers.
So we were talking before we started recording, and you don't live too far from Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, you know this fan base too. You live in this fan
Yep.
base. And when you look at the next year of Atlanta Falcons football, 2026, what are some things that the organization can do right that you think is going to light this fan base on fire?
Just be consistent. I played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so I was fortunate enough to be a part of winning all the time. Now, our fans were accustomed to seeing that. For Atlanta Falcon fans, it's almost like the oh no moment is what they wait for. Being from South Florida, moving to Atlanta, the first thing I always heard was nothing good happens to us. Well, first and foremost, if you're a fan, you think like that, no question, nothing good is going to happen for you. You got to be optimistic, but for the fans there in Atlanta being optimistic, they need to see it to believe it. So I think for Kevin Stefanski, man, you're going into a new situation where they want wins. And if you win in Atlanta, they will love you. They will love you. And the most important thing about the Falcons this season, with all the uncertainty with the organization, you're in a wide open division in the NFC South. The team that won the division last year had the same record as the Atlanta Falcons. Think about that. The same record.
Three-way tie.
You know what I mean? So one would think it should be better, but you don't know.
Right.
But the window of opportunity is definitely there for Atlanta. So
It's there. It's there for the taking. Let's go take it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Bryant McFadden, thank you so much for sitting down with us. It was awesome to hear your insights, and best of luck with everything else you got going on during, I'm sure, a very busy week.
I appreciate you having me.
We've got Dan Graziano of ESPN sitting down with us now. Dan, appreciate you taking some time.
My pleasure.
So where do you view the Falcons kind of at this point? I know there's a lot to come, free agency and the draft, but now that the coaching cycle is settled, we know how close the NFC South is. Has your perception of what the Falcons can be or where they stand changed at all?
I think, Michael Penix's health is such a key part of it. So, it sounds positive on that front, but, without knowing for sure, like what his offseason looks like, and it's hard to really peg it. I feel like they've kind of been sort of right there for so long.
Yeah.
But, obviously a lot of good players. Obviously, a lot of it comes down to, as it does for every team, the quarterback situation. So if he can continue to ascend, and if he can get and stay healthy, then I think it's probably arrow up. I think it's a good hire at head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and I think he'll do good things with him.
So to that point, a major talking point for I think a lot of people is that with Kevin Stefanski, kind of he specializes in this wide zone stuff that Graziano Robinson and this very veteran offensive line has done so well over the last couple of years. For you, how do you see kind of the marriage of what Kevin Stefanski, Tommy Rees even did in Cleveland, who Kevin Stefanski was in Minnesota, and what the Falcons are right now, knowing there's not really a lot of turnover offensively.
Right. And presumably get the offensive line healthier, right? I mean, that was this sort of an underrated part of what went wrong last year.
Absolutely.
Was that late injury to Caleb. So, look, if you're going to build the thing out of Bijan Robinson, there are worse ways to go, right? So, and I think, Kevin Stefanski was a coach that had options, that had other teams interested, and so saw this as a good situation where he can win. And I think, Bijan Robinson and the offensive line are probably a pretty big part of that. Right. So, yes, I think we've seen enough of Kevin as an offensive coordinator and a head coach to have some sense of what he wants to do. And yeah, you keep everybody healthy on the line. I think there's a pretty good chance to. The guy went to the playoffs and won a playoff game with the Browns. Like, I don't want to be mean, but not a lot of Browns coaches have done that. So, and they have a perpetual revolving door at quarterback. So if you have some stability, I think you have a coach who's shown the ability to do good things with almost like a substandard roster. And I would say that your roster, particularly on offensive side, is above that.
And one of those key pieces we learned getting franchise tag yesterday, Kyle Pitts coming back. We know what Kevin Stefanski can do with tight ends. Do you view what Kyle Pitts did last year, particularly later on in the season, as the norm for him kind of moving forward? Did he turn a corner, or
it seemed like he turned a corner with his health, which I think is a big part of it, right? Like he had, even when he was playing in recent years, it seemed like he was playing through some stuff and always had a cleanup of some sort after the season. So it seemed like he was healthy and thriving last year. So, I think that's a franchise tag decision that makes a great deal of sense, because new coaching staff coming in and you're building off a great year, but you want to make sure, is this the norm? They would like to answer that question before committing long term. So it's a nice situation both ways. I'm pretty sure the tag will make him the fifth or sixth highest paid tight end, and then if he does it again, you're like, cool, let's talk, right? So I think that's certainly in there with him. There's no question about it. It's been consistency in terms of health and production, and we saw that last year, and I'm sure they're hoping for more going forward.
Switching over to the defense, retaining Jeff Ulbrich, and kind of the skyrocket effect of 1 year of his system, with especially this defensive front in terms of sack production, getting quarterback off of his spot. What's your opinion on kind of the continuity of retaining Jeff Ulbrich in that spot?
I think that's a wise decision for them, obviously, especially because they infused so many young players into it last year, and so you don't want to necessarily throw a bunch of change at guys like that this early. So I think a good idea to keep Ulbrich and keep that continuity there. Jeff's a good coach, and I think Kevin is the kind of coach that he doesn't necessarily he's got such a network that he doesn't necessarily I need my guy, right? So Jeff Ulbrich, best guy for the job. Let's just keep him, not mess with a good thing. Elephant in the room is obviously what goes on with James Pierce, and that could have a significant effect, but that'll be what it'll be. But yeah, especially in the secondary, the way the young guys performed last year, I think that's very exciting. And yeah, I think Ulbrich. Anytime you install a new system, the second year is always smoother than the first. So I think you can look forward to that too.
So we're kind of on the edge of free agency, obviously the draft. We know the quarterback situation in Atlanta, but when you look at this roster, what are some areas of need for the Falcons in your mind that you'd like to see them add to? I'd
continue to build out on the defense, especially because, again, the unknown with James Pierce. But I think they could stand to be, I would say if there was a criticism of the defensive front last year, it was a little bit light, maybe a little undersized for some of what they need to do. So might want to add a little there in terms of size and strength. I think, seems like is Jesse Bates getting to the end of a contract. So I would do what I could to keep him in the fold. He seems awfully important. You know, and I mean, if Kyle Pitts is going to be your number 2 wide receiver effectively at tight end, that can work. But I think you could stand some depth there. I don't know what's going to happen with Tyler Algier. Does he come back? Does he go somewhere else to get more of an opportunity? And if not, you know, make sure you got Bijan backed up. And then, yeah, the lesson from last year is offensive line health can't be counted on, so you can never have too much of that.
Ian Cunningham coming in as a first-time GM, coming from the Bears, and they have one of the more successful runs recently. What did you make of that decision to bring in Ian Cunningham, and what can you say about what he did with the Bears as well in the partnership with Brian Holt?
Yeah, and high-level experience for Ian in other places too before he got to Chicago. So I think he's a guy that's certainly ready for this opportunity and should do well with it. The success they had in Chicago, you know, they hit on the quarterback. You know, obviously he's a magician that can do incredible fourth quarter things, and that's cool to have. But if you look at their approach last offseason, it was like, all right, what do we need to make this successful right away? They went out and got a couple guards and a center and made sure that they were sound in front. So whatever it is, like I think the lesson from Chicago is like is team building doesn't have sort of this one kind of, you know, one size fits all approach. So I'm sure that what Ian is doing as we speak is assessing like, okay, what do we need to do? Like 8 and 9, you know, right? What do you got to win? 3-4 more games, and all of a sudden you're, you know, in pretty good shape seeding wise. So how do we get them? How do we win those 3 or 4? What do we need to do now that we know, you know, a little bit about who Michael Penix is? Let's get him backed up because, you know, he does have a little bit of a history there. So if Kirk Cousins is out the door, then you got to address that position. But also, like, what do we need around him? Does he need more wide receiver help? Does he need a different kind of offensive lineman to run Kevin Stefanski's system? So I think that's it. I think you're looking at a guy that's had enough front office experience in enough different places and enough different situations that he'll have. And I see Stefanski the same way. He was coaching a lot of different systems. Being able to say, like, this is what this situation calls for. Here's how we address it and move forward there.
That's a great point. Yeah, they both have great track records through some tricky situations, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of experience to lean on there. But thank you so much,
My
Dan,
pleasure.
for taking the time
Thanks
to sit down with us. And hopefully we can chat again soon.
Sounds good.
Sitting down with us now is Danny Kelly from The Ringer, who is co-host of The Ringer Fantasy Football Show, now The Ringer Draft Show, and you do the draft guide. It's a great draft guide. We're going to get into your draft guide. But thank you for sitting down with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
So this is going to be a very draft-centric episode as we are here at the Combine. The Falcons don't have a first-round pick.
Right.
Is this a good draft to not have a first-round pick in? You know, like every draft is different.
Not to totally poo-poo this whole class, but yeah, I think it is. I mean, there are just probably fewer blue-chip talents at the top than we generally would see. I think it's going to be more of like you have a handful of guys that are going to be in the top 10, and then it's more of like a plateau. There could be 40, 50 guys that could go in the end of the first, beginning of the second. I think that does kind of lend to the Falcons' advantage there just because I don't know if there's as many, like I said, true elite guys in this class as compared to most years.
To that point, when you look at the different position group breakdowns, what are kind of some of the deepest groups that when you're looking at the Falcons having a second-round pick could still have some quality guys that you're looking at right there?
Yeah, I think a couple of the positions that I particularly like in this class with the depth and receiver, I think there's quite a few really interesting edge rushers in this class. I think all the edge rushers have like one question as to why they're not going to be quote-unquote like elite top 10 guy. There's a good amount of offensive tackles, just offensive linemen in general. And so I think that those three kind of stand out. Linebackers, there's a handful of linebackers. There's some really interesting safeties in this class. They could get pushed up into the first round just because of, like I said, the lack of blue chip talent. But, those are the first positions that kind of come to my mind. Yeah, it's low, not very many quarterbacks in this class. The running back class is pretty thin. But, yeah, I think receiver, tackle, just offensive line in general. Defensive line, there's some good defensive tackles as well.
So you're basically speaking the Falcons' language.
Yeah.
You essentially named off a lot of the key needs of what this roster needs at this point in time.
Yeah.
So
I think for the last couple of years, I've been looking at receiver. Mm-hmm. It's always just kind of fun. There are a few positions, I think, that when your team drafts that position, it's like a little extra exciting, or you're like, I really want to go watch the highlights.
Yeah, totally.
So are there, like, where does the receiver depth in kind of that second round, are we now starting to talk, hey, it's dealer's choice, it's kind of like pick your flavor of receiver, or is there a specific type? It's slot heavy, it's outside receiver heavy?
No, I think there's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
I think there are some guys that are going to be going in the second round or in that area, second, third round, that, Elijah Surratt, Omar Cooper, two guys from Indiana, who I think are very interesting, each in their own ways. Zachariah Branch, another guy who's just really, really fast. But the way that you look at his, what he did in college, it's kind of a lot of screens, a lot of manufactured touches. Can he do more than that? I think he probably can. They kind of just use him as a gadget guy. But I think he has more to him than that. But yeah, there's kind of all kinds of receivers. You got like slot receivers. You have big guys that are sort of like possession receivers. You got guys that can kind of do everything, play the Z, move around a little bit. So there's pick your style that you're looking for. Probably with London on the roster, you're kind of looking for a guy that can complement that. I think Branch is actually kind of an interesting one, just because get some explosive plays without having to push the ball downfield in the high degree of difficulty throws. He might be a good option for that.
Let's talk about the D tackles, those edge rushers that you were mentioning. That's definitely an area that Ian Cunningham, now the GM here in Atlanta, talked about building in the trenches, and I think that D tackle spot particularly is one that the Falcons can take another step in terms of depth and playmakers. Who are some names that kind of jump off for you in that day 2 time frame?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell who is going to go where, but I think guys that are in that range, Cale Banks from Florida is a really interesting one. I mean, he's like 6'6", 340 or something like that. I don't know what he weighed in today, but he's just got that length. He's got a ton of potential as a pass rusher, because I think his size and movement skills are there, but just hasn't really tapped into it yet. He was injured for most of this last season. So he's a really interesting one. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech is another guy that is, I think, rising up boards. I don't know if he'll go in the first round, or maybe in the second round. He's more of a run defender at this point, so he just kind of plug up the middle, but he's really got a lot of juice. I compared him to Brandon Mebane. I don't remember Brandon Mebane from the Seahawks a bunch of years ago. Just kind of a rotund guy that's going to, take up space in the middle, eat blocks, and he's also pretty quick. So he has sort of like some pass rush potential to him. And then at the edge position, I mean, there's a ton of guys. Oh, the other guy, the Caden McDonald from Ohio State, is another interior guy that I think is going to be in that second, first round range. Again, kind of a designated run defender right now, but might have a little more upside as a pass rusher, just because you see the quickness on tape. And like, depending on what they ask him to do in the pros, I think he has more to him. The edge guys, there's a lot of, I felt like I was writing the same scouting report for like 4 or 5 different guys in the edge spot, because there are a couple guys, Zion Young from Missouri, Derek Moore from Michigan, and TJ Parker from Clemson. TJ Parker, he might go in the first round. He's another guy that it's kind of hard to tell exactly where he's going to go. Coming into the season, he was really highly thought of, and then Clemson just didn't really have a very good year, and he's kind of fallen down a little bit. But those 3 guys in particular, power players on the edge, kind of like set the edge really strong. They're winning with power versus speed and explosiveness. So those 3 guys in particular kind of feel like the same category of pass rushers, where they're bigger, stronger, more physical, and winning with power versus, explosiveness or agility, that kind of thing. R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma is on the other kind of side of that, where he's just an explosive ball of energy off the edge, and I really like him. He's another guy that's going to be in that first, second round range that might not be like the exact size they're looking for, in terms of he's like a little bit undersized, but so explosive, so agile, just plays with a ferocity that you love to see. So those are some guys that I kind of have in my mind.
I feel like those are all qualities that Jeff Ulbrich would be into, right? Ball of energy.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I love the Ringer Draft Guide is your kind of player comparisons. You get very just outside of the box. So do you have 1 or 2 of your favorites from this draft class?
Man.
You're just kind of shades of this.
Well, yeah, the one sort of recurring joke that I do every year that you guys will appreciate for this one is Avion Terrell from Clemson. Who every year I do just like if he had a brother. So James Cook, I was like if Dalvin Cook had a little brother. Avion Terrell is if AJ Terrell had a little brother. So that's just kind of a funny one for me.
Where are you kind of grading him out?
That's a good question too, because he's undersized, and I think it just depends on how teams value. He's another guy that just, when you watch him play, ball of energy, he reminds me of Devin Witherspoon a little bit, who, maybe like a poor man's version, not to get like too over my skis on this, but like he is really, really intense on the field. You never know what he's going to do in terms of he's coming off the edge as a blitzer. They play him kind of in every different position. He plays outside, he plays in the slot. But he is just tenacious, and I really, really enjoy watching him play. But I've heard, people are kind of worried about his size and that kind of thing, and are teams willing to take a guy who's like 180 pounds that high in the draft? You've seen some guys with weight limitations kind of struggle at times, but he's a lot of fun. Peter Woods from Clemson I compared to Shai Hulud, the sandworms from Dune.
Shai Hulud.
I like that one too because I was just picturing him like chasing after the rhythmic back step or whatever, like the drop back of the quarterback.
Making all this sounds. Yeah.
You gotta have a quarterback that like doesn't drop back in rhythm and you'll be okay. But those are a couple ones that I have for this year.
When you are kind of looking back in time and the Falcons draft class last year, and the immediate impact that the four guys that they got on defense made, how much did that feel like an expectation that you had for those guys, or how much do you think they even like exceeded expectations in the level of like how quickly they were on the field and making impacts?
Yeah, so start with remind me of the guys. So
Jalen and Jalen Walker in the first round.
Yeah, Jalen Walker was like straight up one of my favorite players in the entire class. I just loved him coming out. And I think you saw the impact that he could make, the explosiveness, and again, the tenacity and energy that he plays with. To me, that was the first thing that jumped off the tape with him. And then obviously Pierce, production was there. There's now question marks going forward as to what that's going to mean. And then remind me some of the other guys.
Xavier White.
Yeah.
Who fell, I think a lot of people, myself included, was surprised that he was even still on the board when the Falcons picked.
Yeah.
He was somebody who I loved watching at Notre Dame.
Same. His
ball production.
I think I got to his tape kind of late in the process and remember being like, why does this guy not have a little more hype coming in? Because he was, all over the field, super rangy. He had the length and explosiveness and ball skills and kind of just, he was just kind of everywhere for a defense. And so he was a guy that I really liked. I remember really liking the Falcons draft class. I didn't particularly like to move up into the first round because of the risk that comes with. And as a Seahawks fan, the Rams getting that pick didn't make me super happy. But yeah, I think
it all worked out for you, Danny.
Right. I'll take a Super Bowl. That's fine. But
then Billy Bowman Jr. He was
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. He was somebody who I think a lot of people were like undersized but ball of energy type of thing, and it was unfortunate because he ruptures his Achilles after having a start that was honestly the best start of a rookie DB that I saw in the league to that point. Those first 4 games, he was electric. What did you kind of have your thoughts on with him?
It's funny. It feels like there's just a through line here, like energetic, intensity, like a tone-setting type of player. I think that's kind of like what I remember for him in terms of just rangy tone setter, willing to run the alley, hit guys. So I think maybe that was kind of like the through line that they were looking for, like those tone setter type guys that are going to play with a ton of energy, elevate the play of their teammates by that, that kind of thing. And so, obviously good results in year one from a couple of different guys there. And obviously I think Jalen Walker has a chance to be like a star in the league. So yeah.
Fingers crossed,
Yeah.
Jared's going to be mad at me for this, but we're going to go a little bit. I've got to ask you one more question.
Sure.
So Kyle Pitts gets the franchise tag.
Yeah.
He has been a topic of discussion for the Ringer Fantasy Football Show for quite some time.
Sure. Yeah.
Knowing the season he had last year, and with Kevin Stefanski coming in, who has gotten production out of the tight end position.
Yeah.
Where are you at with Kyle Pitts?
I'm back in. This has been, from a fantasy point of view, obviously, we kind of rag on him a little bit because of the expectations early on, and then things just didn't really pan out right away for him. He's still very young. He's
like 25.
He's like the age Travis Kelce was when he made his first production in the NFL.
He can rent a car for the first time now.
Right. So I think from a fantasy point of view, I'm all in still. I think the talent is finally starting to show, because obviously injuries were a huge part of kind of like what was slowing his development, I think. And you see this all the time and tight ends especially, I think, where an injury will kind of like sap your explosiveness, and then you're just not the same player, and then they're trying to figure out a way to kind of deploy you where you're not the explosive player that he was in college. And so I think for the first time really last year, you saw that explosiveness, the game-changing ability to make a catch, stiff arm a guy from behind, keep running, and do kind of some of the stuff after the catch that you saw in college, where he's really a dynamic mismatch creator. And the joke is kind of like every year the fantasy guys are backing on Kyle Pitts, but like I really do think there's a good reason for it now, especially with the coaching staff making such a big focus on the tight end position and historically with Stefanski. And so I'm going to be way too high on him in fantasy again, but I do think it is deserved because he's a really talented player. He's still young, and most importantly, he's like healthy right now relative to where he has been previously. So all aboard again, Travis.
Danny's like, no doubt about it. I'm ready to be heard again.
100%.
Awesome. Well, Danny Kelly, thank you so much for sitting down with us. Everybody go check out his work at The Ringer.
Thanks a lot.
Whew. Man, I'm tired. It's been a heck of a week. It's been an exciting week. I hope you guys learned a lot. Those were some awesome conversations, and it's one of the best parts of this event is getting to be around all of these incredible people and get their take and their perspective on your favorite team. So again, thank you for sticking with us throughout a busy week, and we hope that it kind of kicked off the offseason in the best way possible. So we will see you all again very soon, but that'll do it for us from the 2026 NFL Scouting Combine.